Welcome to the Pigskin Party Podcast, the only podcast that combines real NFL analysis with a splash of pop culture and a dash of the random. Let's get this Pigskin Party started with your hosts, Brian McFadden, Will Southard, and Tommy Yu.
Welcome back to the PPP. So we pulled an audible. We did something we haven't done before. We just had an amazing conversation with former NFL quarterback Erik Kramer, telling us his amazing story of what he went through, his ups, his downs, and how he is in a really, really good place right now. And it was just such a good conversation. We didn't want to cut it short. So we decided to cut that episode as a standalone. And if you were tuning in for some NFL news and for a division preview, this is the right place to be. So we're going to go ahead and jump into previewing the NFC North with Erik. I've been chatting with Ty a little bit, Ty Schalter. Hopefully he's still going to be able to come on. So if he does pop in, we'll make sure to introduce him as well. But so let's go. Let's do some NFL talk. There was really only one piece of news that I really wanted to cover today, and that was concerning Carson Wentz. So there was some news that came out a couple days ago that he had hurt his foot in practice, boy. And you should be happy, Tommy. He's not on Philadelphia anymore.
No, we have a draft pick on the line right now. He has to play 75% of his games, or 70% make
or 70 and make the playoffs.
Tommy, you know those companies you're in. Why don't you feel bad for poor Carson Wentz's foot?
You're
feeling bad about your draft pick.
I'm a Philadelphia fan. I'm allowed to be bitter and trashy, man. Leave it to Wentz to hurt Philadelphia when he's not even in Philly anymore. Make the bad man go away, guys.
So as a quick summary of the actual news, he did decide collectively with the team and team doctors that he will undergo foot surgery. It was supposed to happen today. We're recording this on Monday, so by the time you hear this on Wednesday, it will have already happened, with a time frame for recovery of anywhere between 5 and 12 weeks. Huge range, basically depending on how quickly his foot recovers. So that's the actual news. Tommy is right. What hinges on this is when the Philadelphia Eagles traded Wentz to Indy, the second pick of that trade was a conditional pick. That is a second-round pick that turns into a first-round pick if Wentz either plays 75% or more of the offensive snaps or plays 70% and the Colts make the playoffs. Both of these things are now in jeopardy, especially if Wentz misses closer to the 12-week period than the 5-week period. So what I want to discuss with you guys, Tommy, obviously you've shared how you feel about the Eagles side of it, but let's talk about the current Colts quarterback. So right now they have second-year quarterback Jacob Eason, Brett Hundley, remember him? Little stint in Green Bay in Arizona, and yep. Rookie Sam Ehlinger out of Texas. Very little experience on that line. So what I want to ask, and Erik, I'll start with you on this. Do you think they should go out and get a different quarterback? Should they have a contingency plan in place, or do you think they should roll with these guys and just hope that Carson comes back sooner rather than later?
Who was Peyton Manning's quarterback backup?
Curtis
Painter.
Jim Sorgi.
Sorgi too. Yeah, true.
Right? So who cares? So there's no such thing as a great backup quarterback because there's like, how many great quarterbacks are there right now? Less than 10, probably, right? I mean, they're good players.
Well, Tom Brady at the top, then everybody else.
He just
to be clear,
Brady.
And bam, there goes the ace of spades. I would say that. What do I think about that? I just think that, unfortunately for Philly, like Tom was saying, Wentz is still hurting them, but he's had this injury history from what I was listening to today since like high school. So that shouldn't be a surprise that here we go again. And not to get off Carson Wentz, because I think, he had that amazing year where he ends up not becoming the MVP because of another injury. But it was at least diving across into the end zone and scoring. And, had it not been for that, it's most likely he would have been the MVP in the Super Bowl as well. So I don't know. I just think that some guys get tagged with being injury prone, but who knows? I mean, if Carson Wentz plays 10 or 12 or 14 years, this could be his last injury. You never know. And I don't know. I'm sorry for the Philly people that he could still be hurting your team effectively if he doesn't play enough this year or they don't go to the playoffs. But, if you don't mind switching gears a little bit, the same thing is kind of going on right now with Deshaun Watson. So everyone's afraid to pull the trigger on giving up the lottery, basically, in terms of talent for him, because once you get him, you don't know what charges he's going to face the next day or the next month. So there's, as I was listening to a guy talking about this, he goes, the first part, we're all doing our due diligence on. Whatever's been going on up to this point. You don't know what's going to come about after you give up everything and he signs his name. The next week could be even more disaster for you. So I think that's kind of the way deals are going right now. You got, on the one hand, you got Carson Wentz, who, had he not been hurt, he today would probably be like Deshaun Watson. He's got that kind of ability. To me, he does. But he also kind of fell into a rut where...
Meaning back in 2017, Will. I saw your face. Meaning when he was on an MVP level in 2017.
For a brief moment, Nick Foles
Will,
was Aaron Rodgers.
keep up with the conversation. Okay?
Sorry.
Keep up, Will.
1 year. So, but in the years since, where things have gone south for Carson Wentz, they talk about all the hits he's taken and all that. Much of that is on Carson Wentz, I'll be honest with you. Because when you drop back and you start getting through your reads, your feet and eyes should look ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. So it shouldn't take 4 seconds to get to the third guy. And that's on Carson Wentz. I believe he was trying to do way too much. And so that's possibly why he's getting injured. So if he could become a little bit more efficient in what he does, he might not be holding the ball as long. That's my take on that.
He's trying to play hero ball, like trying to save his team and just try to do too much instead of take what's given.
This league's not called hero ball. Watch how Joe Montana played. When you say the GOAT, Will, that's mine.
Fair enough.
Montana. Can't argue with Montana, man.
Well, between both of us, we both know who's more qualified to have an opinion on quarterbacks.
Only one person on this podcast right now, Mr. Kramer.
You cannot argue with the fact that there's only been one guy in the history of the world who's been at 10 Super Bowls and won 7. In both cases, it's one guy. But in terms of how that whole thing actually, the position itself gets played, I think Montana in his prime.
Jalen Hurts, I agree.
I mean, you mentioned Deshaun. Nice and even the deal that's in place for Carson Wentz, right? The contingency pick deal.
Yeah.
There are teams that could do that, right? With Texas or with the Texans and say it's contingent on him playing next year, We'll give you 3 firsts or we'll give you a first, if he doesn't play or whatever. Right.
Right.
There's ways
your point exactly is what I heard someone else talk about, how it could very much be contingent upon, just like Carson Wentz is. Those if he doesn't play or if he plays X amount of games but not this many or whatever, if he doesn't perform this way, those first rounders turn into third rounders or whatever, instead of 3 it becomes 2, who knows? But that's what you're getting is never before would you have ever had a talent, it's never happened before, where there's been a guy at the top of his position and profession, just happens to be a quarterback. Never happened before, where he's in his prime, where is he, 26? And doesn't want to play for Houston, but now they don't want him to play, and no one else wants him either.
And he's showing up at training camp, and there's questions
safety.
He's playing safety, right? He's throwing, with the fourth stringers. It's what are they? They don't even know what to do with him. Like David Culley and the Texans don't know what to do with him.
No, they don't.
Tommy, I'm gonna throw one thing at you for Philly. Here's one credit for Howie Roseman. Eric brought up a good point. This injury for Wentz is something that's lingered since high school. How did Indianapolis not detect that in their physical? And did Philly know about it? And they're just like, yes, got him.
Yeah, no. Eric brought so many great points. And one of the funniest things, Eric, sorry if you don't follow up because I'm just trying to be hip with the listeners to show off that I'm hip. When he was describing the Carson Wentz scenario, it reminded me of that meme of GTA, like, oh, snap, here we go again. It's like one of those things when Wentz gets hurt. But you bring up a great point. This injury is so weird because it started off with the news saying, oh, during training camp, he said he had like a twinge or something in his
stepped
foot.
funny.
Yeah, like he stepped
rolling out. He didn't get hit. He's just rolling out.
But the way that they describe it is like, oh, he has like a twinge. And I was like, okay, he's probably out for a couple of, practice to be fine.
Twinge. Did his foot fall asleep? What is
right?
a twinge?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's Belichick speak.
Yeah,
he's got
exactly.
a compound fracture. Well, no, he's really got a lower leg contusion.
He just got to rub some dirt on it. That's essentially how they broke out. And then they're like, oh, he might just need to rest a little bit. Oh, he might be ready for week 1 now. Oh, he might need surgery. Okay. Yeah, he might amputate his foot. We don't know what's going on. But like the comedy comes from the fact that you are absolutely right, Eric and Brian, when you said they're kind of trying to pinpoint where this kind of injury came from. They're like, oh, it could be traced back all the way from high school. And then I'm sitting here just dumbfounded because the gamble that Philadelphia took when they made him the number 2 overall, and then additionally with Indianapolis trying, with Frank Reich being like, no, Carson Wentz could be our guy. Like, they're trying to make him out to be a franchise quarterback, and I still love Carson Wentz. I wish him success, but the fact is, when you go all in like this, I just don't understand how these people that get paid millions of dollars, these doctors, to kind of make sure everything's okay and say, oh yeah, no, it might have been from high school and then like a bone fell off, or I don't know what's going on, but yeah, this is going to need surgery. So for me personally, like what you said, Brian, I feel like you know how I feel about Howie Roseman. I'm not a big fan of him, but maybe I wouldn't put it past him thinking, oh yeah, this is much worse than we think, so we'll get anything we can. Oh wow, Frank Reich still doesn't know? Okay, yeah, let's try to make a move. But at the end of the day, I don't know. Now, not drinking the Kool-Aid of Carson Wentz, I'm looking and be like, oh, you guys are right. He is injury prone. I don't need to keep apologizing for him. This is refreshing. So you guys are absolutely right.
I have a specific question for you.
What?
So you mentioned Nick Foles at the end of our last episode, but we cut off with just the Eric story. Yeah. So do you think there's a shot of Nick Foles, after Wentz gets injured, getting traded from the Bears to the Indianapolis Colts under Frank Reich, and then ruining Carson Wentz's career for the second time?
No, that would ruin his life.
His name's not Tyrod Taylor. But question, Eric, do you think that
I think yes, that could happen, Brian.
Thank you, Eric. See, Will chose to ignore the question. Eric validated me.
I think Nick Foles is overrated as a third-string quarterback, honestly. But I mean,
as a third-string quarterback,
hey,
wow.
Maybe that's the right fit for him as third string. But
don't tell Tommy that.
Well, didn't one of you guys say he was a little miffed at being third string? Yeah. For the Bears?
Oh, yeah. If you listen to his press conference that went out earlier today when they were kind of talking about speculation, Nick Foles is pretty reserved typically, but he was fired up at this press conference because I feel like he knows that he has to put his voice out there to try to have
playing behind a brand new Ricky and Andy Dalton. It's just...
Well, I'll say I have my own little story. That's just life. And I'm sure Nick Foles has seen if it hasn't happened to him, it's got to have happened to some people around him. It happened to me. So in 91, when I was with the Lions, we go to the NFC Championship game, and I come back for the preseason, for our mini camp. And if you might have remembered, I know it's a while back for you, Tommy. You might not have even been born then. But like the Lions drafted Andre Ware that year in 1990 it was.
Oh, yes, of course.
Camp, right? And so Rodney Pete was the starter to start the 91 season and 90. And then so we get a new offensive coordinator, Dan Henning. Remember him? So he was with the Falcons for years and I think was with Joe Gibbs at different times. Anyway, so I show up for the mini camp following that NFC Championship game. We hadn't been back to off-season workouts or anything yet. And I'm not first team, second team, and I'm now where Nick Foles is, third team. Ooh. And Nick Foles didn't go to he went Super Bowl, but not last year. And so that just happens, and you work your way out of it the best you can. And the minute you start making that the focus that you're getting screwed, or, if he's getting screwed, he should go talk to somebody about it that can do something about it. Reporters can't do anything about that. So he should be taking that right to the top. Whoever the quarterback coach is, whoever the offense coordinator, head coach, whoever. But that's not something that it's not gonna win him anything.
Well, I think Chicago's actively trading. I mean, they're actively shopping him. And speaking of coming in off the bench, Ty Schalter has joined us. Ty, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am. And by the way, Eric, I'm from Lansing, Michigan. lifelong Lions fan, I was biting my tongue not screaming Andre Ware into the phone. So it is good to talk to you. Good to hang out with all you guys, and I'm super excited to talk some football.
Give me Schalter.
Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Already plugged the newsletter, but as a quick reminder, since Ty is on now, Ty is an NFL reporter for 538. He's a co-host of the 3 and Out NFL podcast, and he just launched his very own newsletter, of which I am a subscriber. Gimme Schalter. Ty, so awesome to have you. Perfect timing.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be on. And thanks for the plug and the kind words. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
I got a question for Erik. We're just talking about camp and going third string.
Will interrupting my segue naturally.
There's
Continue.
no segue. There was not a good segue time. This is a question. I'm curious because I don't talk to a lot of former quarterbacks.
I love the infighting here. By the way, I just love
this. Is every episode, Erik. Every episode.
Part of the lure why people listen.
So that's definitely why. It's not my amazing goatee. But listen, so. In camp, right, when you have these rookies coming in and after a draft, and you just talk about yourself finding yourself third string, what's the primary factor? I mean, I know it maybe depend on coaching staff, but like, what is the offensive squad looking for to move quarterbacks up or down? Is it purely just how well you're making reads in practice and in camp, or is it more than that? Because I mean, everybody's got their own unique arm talents, right? Is it the throws people are making? Is it just like all of it? Or like, what do you think? Is it very team by team? Or like, how do these rookies move up or down?
Well, I don't think rookies are any different than anyone else. You're basically evaluated, depending on your first year or your 21st year, the same way. Do you make decisions well? What do you bring? Can you avoid people? Can you throw the ball on time? Does it get accurately? Do you throw with anticipation? Does it get there on time where it's supposed to be on time? Does it hit the guy in stride? Does it hold? Do you hold him up with the ball when you're supposed to? Things of that nature. Like, does the offense move when you're in because of you, not in spite of you? And I think as that happens, practices go by, practice games go by. That's how the evaluation process happens, and that's how you either find yourself in or not in.
Gotcha.
So I think we'll know more about the Carson Wentz situation in the next maybe 2 to 3 weeks. I think they said that they'll have a better idea of the actual recovery time frame, whether it's going to be closer to the 5 weeks or closer to the 12 weeks. Tommy will be watching intently to find out if his Eagles draft pick is going to be a first or a second. We will see. But as promised, we've got Ty on. We've still got Erik on. Let's go ahead and dive into our team division preview of the week, and that is the NFC North. So as we've done the past 3 weeks, we're going to go through each team in order of their 2020 standings. We'll talk about key departures, key additions, some of the important draft picks they made, and the line for wins according to Vegas. And then we'll go around the horn and get your feedback on each team and get predictions of where we think this division will end up in 2021. So we're going to start with the division champs, the NFC champion 2 years running, Green Bay Packers. And I'm glad that we did this episode this week because we actually know who the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers will be in 2021. There's no speculation, at least for the upcoming year. Aaron Rodgers will be the starting quarterback for Green Bay. So we can just put that to rest at least until this next offseason, and we have an entire run of speculation again. So, key players re-signed by the Packers. They did manage to sign a new deal with running back Aaron Jones, tight end Mercedes Lewis. Key additions, quarterback Kurt Benkert, wide receiver Randall Cobb, which was part of the whole Rodgers fiasco, and that was one of his demands is, hey, you remember that guy Randall Cobb? He's like 35 now, plays for the Texans. Yeah, let's bring him back. Key departures, they lost
Deshaun
back
Watson's
running back.
not getting in this year.
Yeah. Yep. True. Key departures, running back Jamal Williams. They lost center Corey Linsley, defensive line Montavious Adams, linebacker Christian Kirksey, and defensive back Tramone Williams. In the draft, they drafted Eric Stokes, cornerback out of Georgia, center Josh Myers, and wide receiver Amari Rodgers. The Vegas win total is at plus or minus 10 wins. So I have to start with, we'll start with Ty on this since he just joined. Your thoughts on the Green Bay Packers? We know they've got Rodgers. What's your outlook for 2021?
First of all, the Green Bay Packers have not lost Tramon Williams. he will always be a Green Bay Packer. I'm sure at some time, 42, 52, 62, they'll need a slot cornerback, and he'll just appear, in training. He'll be there, absolutely. Packers, obviously, this is the last dance. This is an all-in push. They have a team they think can get to the Super Bowl. They should have done it last year. If you're sitting there, you're hosting the NFC Championship game, and Tom Brady throws you 3 picks. There's no reason you should be playing golf in February. You should have closed the deal. You get Aaron Rodgers back. Everybody's motivated. And I hate to project armchair psychoanalysis at any time, and especially now. I'm sure there's a ton of mixed feelings all over that locker room. But the one thing we know is that if they don't do it this year, the whole thing gets blown up. Devontae Adams goes. Aaron Rodgers goes. It gets blown up if they do it too, right? So I think everybody's motivated, and they're going to give it their best shot. And I think they have a lot of talent, and they're going to be similar to where they were last year. And I expect them to be, deep in the NFC playoff picture again this year. And Aaron Rodgers, what does a contract year look like for Aaron Rodgers? What does a prove-it year look like for Aaron Rodgers? We saw how much he flipped the switch last year. Does he have another whole setting on that switch? Can he push it farther? If anybody can, it's him.
Erik, what about you? What are your thoughts on Green Bay? Do you think this is Rodgers' last dance? I mean, him and Adams certainly seem to think it is. Do you think he can find that extra level of motivation that Ty was mentioning? Do you think maybe his motivation isn't as strong because he spent an offseason debating whether he might even retire? What are your thoughts?
I don't think Aaron Rodgers needs to change a thing. The fact that he's there, and just because he's Aaron Rodgers, doing what Aaron Rodgers does for a decade plus, he's been the best quarterback in the league for how long now? And so if he runs the ball on that third down, they get the first down. If they don't lose both their offensive tackles, they're going to obviously have a better day than they had against the Buccaneers in the second half. So I don't think they have to change a whole bunch. I believe they're going to get back to the NFC Championship again. I'm not so sure about the Bucs. The Bucs, I think, were lucky to get. Well, I shouldn't say lucky. They were good at the end of the year. Ooh. They were not very good in the middle of the year, and they were not very good because of Tom Brady. So he found not
Will is triggered. Will is triggered.
He found a second
Will
gear
is
that
literally
he did not have early in the year. So he's the guy that's got to keep it up. Aaron Rodgers is going to be Aaron Rodgers. So I would book that. They're going to win the division and be in the NFC Championship game again.
Listen, if there's one person,
not in spite of.
If there's one person that doesn't have a problem keeping it up, it's Tom Brady, Eric. You can be sure of that. But
with Giselle, naturally.
Listen, I didn't say that. You did. Listen, I mean, ask this question, and this is just throwing it out there. I mean, given the situation, like Aaron just unloaded on the Packers in that press conference, and Brian Gutekunst, right, is this is a question. I don't have an answer to this. I'm just wondering, but is there a chance that yes, they could make I agree. I mean, it's a loaded team. Aaron is amazing, mechanically better than Tom Brady. I'll admit that, by the way. Just at being a quarterback, better than Tom Brady.
Athletically, physically.
But is there
his beard game is better? Is
there a chance they kind of do an implodey Steelers thing, right? Where there's just not a good, or is Aaron just in it? You think no chance of the?
Well, who's your team?
I mean, right?
He loves Brady. Right. Whatever team Brady is on.
I like Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, and Tom Brady, and they just happen to still play for the same team.
Yeah, my girlfriend thought that Tom Brady sold his soul to the devil. That's why they won the Super Bowl last year.
That's probably true.
Maybe he'll have to do it again.
I believe that. Which
is kind of what when you think back to the Dan Bundy's episode, that's what Al Bundy did to get to the Super Bowl. So I would think that, no, I don't think it's going to take a whole much of anything. I think, like I said, I think the Aaron Rodgers and the offensive team that they have, the defensive team they're the best team in the NFC. The fact that they didn't get in the Super Bowl last year has more to do with the fact that they lost 2 offensive tackles just prior to that. I could say the same thing for Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And so, I think I think it was a combination of a lot of things going right at all the right times. I mean, look at how they dominated in the second half against the Saints, and nothing came out about Drew Brees until after the game, how he was playing with a separated shoulder. So, a lot of things worked out well for Tampa last year. Are all those things going to work out again in the exact same fashion? I don't think so, but I do think Green Bay will be there in the same fashion they were.
Tommy, let's get your thoughts on the Packers for 2021.
Yeah, for all the reasons that you guys put so eloquently, I have Packers, and maybe this is hot topic, or not in a hot topic, like a hot take, which I don't think it is at all, but I think they clearly easily run away with the division. I have the over for them as well. I think you said Vegas has like right around 10-ish. I think I have them down
10,
for
yeah.
12 wins. And for everything that you mentioned, even what Will said, I think that isn't a realm of possibility of things maybe falling apart. But for me personally, just the way that everything has kind of poetically led up to this point right now, I think this is going to sound dramatic, but hey, that's what we're all about here, right? This is his legacy year. This is him saying, I got everything my way right now. I for some reason asked for Cobb to come back. He's coming back. I talked to Devontae, my good old buddy, and we're doing this last dancing. So it's almost like Rodgers is saying, kind of like what you said, Brian, what does a contract year look like? And it's almost of the fact of, hey, Rodgers, let's see what you got. You just won a MVP. Let's see if we can bounce back. Everyone's saying how everyone always regresses back after a phenomenal year. But for me personally, I feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to be the exception. And we are going to see something magical again. And just as a pure football fan, I know there's a lot of fans of like the Lions or other teams in the division that we're talking about right now. But just as a football fan, for me, it's just going to be an absolute treat personally to kind of see what he's going to be able to put together. And obviously, I personally think me picking 12 wins out of the new 17-game season, I actually think I'm pretty low on that. But that's how highly I'm thinking of Green Bay heading into this upcoming season.
Yeah, the biggest question mark is what exactly Rodgers looks like this year. A year after he already had his prove-it year. He proved everybody wrong, including the organization in Green Bay. He gets his wish. He plays one last year, and then he gets to decide what he wants to do next year. But there's still, top to bottom, if we're just talking about this division, it's the most talented roster. You've got the MVP playing. The losses that they have, I don't think are going to be enough to not win the division. Whether they're back in the NFC Championship game, that's an entirely different story. We're not going down that road. We're just talking about the North. Unlike you, Tommy, I do think the Packers will win this division. I do not think they will run away with it. There's another team we'll mention later that I think are going to give them a run for their money. So the second team in the 2020 standings who also somehow backed into the playoffs was the Chicago Bears. Key players re-signed. They franchise-tagged wide receiver Allen Robinson, re-signed cornerback Artie Burns. Key additions, quarterback Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, as Will mentioned earlier. It's Red Rifle, Red Rocket, whatever your nomenclature is preferred. Running back Damian Williams, outside linebacker Jeremiah Atuachu, wide receiver Demir Bird, and cornerback Desmond Trufant. Key departures, they lost their starting quarterback for the last few years, Mitchell Trubisky, who is now in Buffalo, specialist Cordero Patterson, and cornerback Kyle Fuller, who is now with the Broncos. Key 2021 draft picks, there's really only one that truly matters, and that is quarterback Justin Fields, who they traded up to get in the first round, but they also traded up to get offensive tackle Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State, and they drafted offensive tackle Larry Borum as well. So Vegas has their win total at plus or minus 7.5. I think we can all agree that this really is going to hinge on just what Justin Fields does. But Erik, as the actual person in the room who has played for the Chicago Bears, we're going to start with you. What's your outlook for Chicago this year?
I think I'm kind of like everyone else right now. I think when they had success last year, towards the end of the year, even despite the fact that it was a soft schedule, what they looked good at doing was they committed to the run game. David Montgomery was explosive, really all year long. But then they started to rely on him, not only giving him reps running the ball, but out of the backfield, catching passes. Trubisky was great at keeping things simple, the play-action game, picking a receiver. Typically, the guy was open enough for him to throw them the ball. And they've got a solid defense. Probably not what they were a few years ago, but still good enough. And if they stick to that formula, I don't care who's quarterback. And Andy Dalton, to me, is an upgrade over Trubisky and Foles. And he's not great. I don't know that he ever was, but he at least made a Pro Bowl or two, maybe three. And he's had some good years behind him, but I think he's good enough of an athlete. I think he's accurate enough, and he keeps the game simple enough where I think he can be productive in a very simple scheme, which is kind of what they have. It's not super complex, and nor should it be. And they've got to me, they've got a good enough offensive line, a good enough running game. You mentioned they just added Damian Williams as well. And I don't think the formula for them this year, anyway, is going to be to interject Justin Fields into that formula. I really don't.
So you think they should keep Dalton all year as the starter?
I think they will, yeah. And I think they should because
interesting.
Because look at to me, when I didn't watch Justin Fields a ton, but I watched him enough for me. And that look at all the teams that needed a quarterback that went another direction, either another position or just another quarterback. And when I watch him play, yes, he makes some great throws. Yes, he makes some great athletic runs. But what I don't see out of him is not that he can't get there, but they're going to have a coach that's going to help him get there, is a fluidity with his, like I mentioned before with Carson Wentz, that was missing. A little fluidity with the way his feet and eyes move through the progression so that it's quick, it's efficient, it's on time, it's where it's supposed to be. I would see a lot of receivers, and like I said, sometimes he made great plays, just average, consistent plays that turned into be a great result for the play. But typically, it's really just what I mentioned. You don't have to have the strongest arm in the world. You just have to be accurate. You have to throw on time. And I saw a lot of plays where he would have guys wide open in either A, not throw them the ball, or when he would throw it, it would be just kind of hanging up there for a little ways, and the receiver would have to make some great catch to wrestle the ball away from the defender. And that's just not going to be – he's got to get better at doing very simple little things. Joe Montana, who I mentioned before, could make the greatest play be the third alternate receiver that gets the check down, that instead of going for 1 yard goes for 6 and gets the first down, and now it's a fresh set of downs. And it's a series of all those kind of plays. It's the 5 yard throw that gets 15 after the catch. And that's what I don't see Justin Fields doing just yet. And I don't want to go on and on and on because he may turn out to be a great quarterback. But I think at this phase, it really should be Andy Dalton's. And I think he's proven that he's worthy of that. Everybody knows that Andy Dalton's not the long-term solution. He's got a 1 year contract. And Justin Fields at some point is going to step in. To me, it just wouldn't make sense to force it in this year.
Ty, what are your thoughts on this? We know that this was basically a Hail Mary for Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. Not many GM coach duos get a chance to draft a second first-round quarterback and still get to keep their job. So what have you seen out of Fields, either in his tape at Ohio State or at training camp so far? Do you think that they should sit him like Erik says, or do you think they should start him earlier?
Yeah, I totally agree with Erik. Here's the thing. If Andy Dalton was the quarterback of the Chicago Bears last year, they'd have won at least a couple more games and maybe more. So you are raising the floor with him. I know it is not cool to like Andy Dalton. It is not. There's no evidence that I can point to that says Andy Dalton is a plus player at quarterback. Now he's going to make you better, but I think he does make the Chicago Bears better. Justin Fields, I love as a prospect. I think he has all the tools. I talked myself into, being good with it if the Lions took him, because I believe all the talent is there and his ceiling is as high as anybody's. But this is a perfect situation for him because you don't have to start him. He does not have to walk onto the field and be the savior of a struggling team. He can sit and watch and learn and get comfortable, and they can build that offense around him. And then they can also give him some playing time in spots. And for me, that's all upside. That's the situation you want to be in. Never mind, you have Nick Foles there also. So I don't understand why you go for now. Right, exactly. So I don't know why you create that perfect situation for yourself where you can let the kid dictate the pace. You can let Justin Fields take on as much as he's comfortable with. I mean, the big knock on Justin Fields was, how quick does he get through his reads? What is his processing speed? What is the decision making? Well, you have the ability to control that with Nagy's offense coming from the Andy Reid tree, the decisions you're asking the quarterback to make, how open the receivers are getting. You franchise tagged Allen Robinson, so you have a wide receiver who can get open, and especially who can make contested catches, gives you that big strike zone. Fields isn't going to have to thread the needle every single time, so I think it's a great situation for him. So, you split reps and let them both go. Andy Dalton doesn't need a huge diet of reps to go out and do what he does. But at the same time, there's no pressure for me to rush Fields onto the field. And there's every opportunity, I think, for the Bears to go out there and win a few ball games. You win, 3, 4, 5 of your first 5, 6, 7. And, then there's no pressure on anybody. They can keep doing that. And if Fields earns the job, so be it.
Hey, Eric, I got a question. How do you subscribe to the theory of thought that says that starting a quarterback too early in the NFL, like year one, is actually detrimental to like their long-term success because they just kind of like, I don't want to say fake it, the first year, but they do what they have done in college. Do you think having a year to sit behind somebody like Dalton is actually upside, or do you think like you're either going to grow or not in the NFL based on whether you're going to, it's just your innate talent?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I think you have to, as an evaluator, a little bit get out of this, okay, a first-round quarterback versus a third-round quarterback, or a defensive end drafted in this round versus that round. I think who you draft, who comes across as you evaluate people, do people as quarterbacks say? Can you move around? Like, take Josh Allen. Here's a guy that started right from day one. Am I right about that? His rookie year?
So, not day one, but early on in his first season.
Okay, so here's a guy that coming out, the knock on him was, okay, great, exceptional physical ability, but he didn't play at a great level in terms of college competition. Same thing could be said for Carson Wentz. But, I'll go back to Joe Montana. So knowing a little bit, because that's the passing game anyway, that's what we ran in Chicago. So it's not that simple. I mean, your footwork and everything, it's not always easily to get through until you rep things, and over time, can you see that you've got the right footwork and the right anticipation, and can you look defenders this way and throw that way and put the ball where you want it to? When you start moving in that direction, then that's the guy we want to get on the field. We want to look for places to maybe interject him into a game for a series or two, and you kind of have to start thinking about, we're going to go in his direction. How are we going to get him to where we want him to be by X amount of time in the season? I don't know that that's being talked about right now with Justin Fields. I doubt that it is, because as one of you had mentioned, I mean, Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, their jobs are on the line probably past where they should have been. And so they've got to win, and they've got to be productive and at least get to the playoffs again in this 17-game season. And so I don't think they're looking at Justin Fields as that guy, at least not yet. But I think in spurts he can be, because there's so many things he can do outside the norm of what other quarterbacks can do. Nobody's thinking about, if the roles reverse, how are we going to get Andy Dalton in the game for a series here and there so that he can explode on the scene? No one's thinking that. But I'm going to guess they are thinking that with Justin Fields. But when he crosses that threshold of, he's the guy that we're going to build this offense around. First of all, you don't build an offense around somebody. You have an offense that somebody fits into, and then you can kind of mold and tweak things to suit his strengths.
Well, I think one of the problems with this particular scenario is the fact that both Pace and Nagy, their careers, their current jobs hinge on the success of Justin Fields specifically. So I'm not sure they're going to want, even if it's the right thing to do, I'm not sure they're going to want to sit him too long, because if they have even if let's say Andy Dalton wins 9 games, they go 9-8. That's not a terrible season. It's technically one more win than last year. But if they don't see an improvement, they could lose their jobs. If they don't put Fields out there and hope that he has success, they could view it as like, look, we got to play this guy. Tommy, I want to ask you, because you're our resident tape dog here, and I'm sure you watched a lot of tape. I know you watched tape on Justin Fields. Do you think he has what it takes based on what you've seen? Do you have concerns? And how soon do you think Chicago should turn to him for the starting role?
Personally, I must have missed something, because I am going to defer to Erik's expertise, obviously, playing the position, just being as successful as he has. But personally, Justin Fields is actually the quarterback that I've seen the most film on, at least quarterback-wise. It definitely grinded some hours. And personally, everything I saw on him as a prospect got me really, really hot and bothered. I really loved everything that he brought to the table. And personally, the way I viewed it, everyone is kind of crowning Trevor Lawrence as the pinnacle, the best prospect since, Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning. You've heard this narrative. But for me, it was Trevor Lawrence, then Justin Fields, and then everybody else. When Zach Wilson bursted onto the scene, I was like, oh, that's funny. Then, of course, the Trey Lance story with going to the Niners, Mac Jones, all that stuff. But for me, it was always Trevor Lawrence, then Justin Fields, and then everybody else kind of thing. So personally, I think the biggest cause for concern for me is kind of like what you mentioned, Brian, with, Nagy and having the pressure of, okay, our job is like, we shouldn't even have a job, but it kind of now is on Fields. But one thing that I feel like that we should talk about that probably, honestly, Erik will probably just be like, actually, that's wrong, which I completely will probably agree, is there's going to be so much pressure from the fan base. I mean, think of Chicago. Sorry, Erik. It's not the same times when you were the quarterback and breaking all these franchise records that are still alive today, but these fans are so starved for success. The defense that they have, the run game that they have, everything is built to win. Unfortunately, there's a big bad man named Mr. Rodgers protecting that division, saying this is mine. But as a fan, you see someone like Justin Fields. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys saw that headline when someone, I don't know, I think he fell really ill or something happened or he was going to die or something. And in his final breath, he's like, wow, I'm never going to see Justin Fields play. And he was a Chicago fan. And luckily, he made a full recovery.
Make-A-Wish or something. And, and Fields came and talked.
Yeah, Fields actually went down. Yeah. So this is how optimistic Chicago fans are. And I, for one, once again, I have no bias. I love Justin Fields. But I agree with everything that everyone said. I think there should be no rush. But I do fear the public perception of them banging, like Andy Dalton, poor guy. He's going to throw one incompletion and everyone's going to scream, Justin Fields. I'm going to be like, guys, you don't know what you have. Dalton is a fine, great quarterback that could help. He's a great veteran. But yeah, for everything that we mentioned, I feel like they have the luxury to wait. But I feel like pressures from Nagy, public perception, and just everything in general might kind of catapult it to be a little bit premature. But personally, from what I've seen, I do believe in Fields.
Let's move to the...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Erik.
Well, I'll just wrap that up by saying one thing, and that is, yes, there'll be fans everywhere screaming in every city for the one guy they want to play. But they don't. When they lose a game, they're not going to get fired for that game. So I think
they get to go home.
Matt Nagy's made the mistake of, in my opinion, and I don't think it was just his choice. It was Ryan Pace's choice too, to stick too long, to first draft Trubisky in the first place, and then sticking with him too long, because there was never a point where he did what I talked about. There was never a point where he looked fluid and moved into throws and placed the ball where he wanted to. It was like receivers were having to catch a pass from him that was placed and not where they were expecting it.
Poor Allen
I don't
Robinson.
think Matt Nagy wants to make that mistake again, nor does Ryan Pace. And until they see out of Justin Fields what I just talked about, you're not going to see Justin Fields. You might see him in spots, but you're not going to see him taking over the job, because that's not the way they're going to save their jobs.
Well, let's move on to the third team in the division, the Minnesota Vikings. a team with a little bit of mystery. They definitely had some injury issues. Their defense was very underperformed for a Mike Zimmer defense. But obviously Justin Jefferson was a revelation. Some of the key players that they re-signed, guard Dakota Dozier, wide receiver Chad Beebe. They added quite a bit on both sides of the ball. Cornerback Patrick Peterson from the Cardinals, safety Xavier Woods from Dallas, tackle Dalvin Tomlinson from the Giants, just recently signed wide receiver D.D. Westbrook, brought back cornerback Mackenzie Alexander, who was with the Bengals, former Viking, now back with the team, and cornerback Bashad Breeland from the Chiefs. Key departures, tight end Kyle Rudolph, who was with the Giants, tackle Riley Reif, and safety Anthony Harris, who is now with Tommy's Eagles. Key draft pick, their first-round pick was offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw, quarterback Kellen Mond, who they drafted in the third round, and they let Kirk Cousins, they at least gave him a heads up that they would be drafting a quarterback, unlike Rodgers' scenario, and linebacker Chaz Surratt. So Vegas has them plus or minus 8.5, so Vegas has them at second place. We'll start with you on this one. What's your outlook for the Vikings this year?
I mean, Dalvin Cook carries that team, right? Dalvin Cook and their their receiving core thrives because of that. But I wonder about the Vikings. Like you just remember them back. Who is that? The cornerback's name slips my mind now.
Xavier Rhodes.
That's it. And they just, that defense.
Eric with the save.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
No hesitation.
I mean, they got a lot of talent, but I don't know. I mean, is Cook going to be able to do his thing? Is Cousins going to stay healthy? I mean, like you said, it's pretty much the Aaron Rodgers Packers show in the division, closely followed by the Bears. So I don't know, man. I don't know if they're going to be able to take that next step. I can't really see any of the pieces put in play for them to do that this year. And Cousins is always like, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the system or what it is. Curious, your guys' take on why this is, but he's just never like, he flashed in Washington for a little bit, but he's like not the guy to get you over the top.
He puts up the stats.
You know what I mean? Yeah, he does. Look at who he's throwing to, right? So
that's true.
Apparently, Will, when he asked that, or when he made that statement, you liked that. Apparently, you didn't.
I liked Cousins. I mean, I thought he was okay. I just don't know if he's like the guy to deliver the Vikings to where they're trying to go.
But do they need that? Zimmer wants to be a run-first offense with a smash-mouth defense, and the
Dalvin
defense
Cook's amazing.
was not. The defense was not up to par last year. So, Ty, do you think the improvements they've made?
Let's go.
Sorry, I know you picked. I caught you at the wrong time there. Do you think they can improve that defense enough to play Mike Zimmer style football to where Cousins can just rely on the play action, rely on the Dalvin Cook running game? Obviously, Jefferson and Thielen, amazing weapons. Where do you see Minnesota this season in the division?
Yeah, it's tough. I do question the defense and if they have enough personnel. I know they did reload on the defensive interior. I have questions about the secondary. I don't know if they have enough weapons. Dalvin Cook, obviously, love Dalvin Cook, big Dalvin Cook fan. But Kirk Cousins, and it pains me to say this. It pains me to say this because I am a third-generation Michigan State Spartan. I love my hashtag Spartan Dogs. Love Kirk Cousins, but, big games, big spots is where he does not show up. And that's been true from the beginning at Michigan State. And that's carried all the way through his pro career where, week 3, week 4, week 5, good. He's clearing that bar. He's not making the mistake. Big spot, Monday Night Football, divisional rival, and that's when he throws 2 picks or the pick at the worst time. And it is a limiter on their success. It has been a limiter on their success. It's going to keep being a limiter on their success. And I like Mike Zimmer as a coach. He's great quote and has put together some great defenses, but I don't think they have the mojo. I like the Bears overall, and I like their upside more than I like the Vikings upside. I just don't see more than 9 or 10 wins out of the Vikings in any scenario this season, but I can see where the Bears could legitimately be good. And obviously they're both looking up at the Packers.
Tommy, what about you? How you liking it? The Vikings this year, offense, defense, whole package.
Yeah, for me personally, I have Vikings coming in second in the division with 10 wins. I don't know what the over-under is, but I have them down for
8.5.
8.5, so I'll take the over there easy. But a lot of what Ty said rings true, and I'm going to say it. No one's going to say it, so I'm going to say it as a Philly fan. Kirk Cousins is essentially Tony Romo. Tony Romo is this glorified, everyone's like, he's a god, he should be in the hall, he's so under... No, he was a good quarterback.
This really sounds like some Philly Cowboys hate coming out right now.
Tony Romo was a great quarterback. He could get the stats, but he couldn't win the big game. Kirk Cousins is maybe he's in a smaller market, he's in Minnesota, he puts up good stats, he can't win the big game. But when you look at his every season finish, he's pretty high up there in a lot of passing categories that a lot of people don't think of because, once again, it's Kirk Cousins. But Kirk Cousins, in my opinion, maybe it's because I've witnessed my fair share of terrible quarterback play. I'm like, yo, where can I get one of those? People might take it for granted how good he actually is, but personally, for everything what everyone mentioned here, I just don't see him as the guy delivering the Lombardi over to Minnesota that's never won one. I always look at Minnesota as like a Philly brother, being like, oh, we've always been kind of good, but we can never win the Super Bowl. And then 2017 happened, and now all of a sudden, I'm better than Vikings fans. I'm the king. But in all seriousness,
you feel so good about yourself now, don't you?
Dude, I'm on top of the world because I know we sold everything for that. That's why everyone gets... That's not here nor there. But in all honesty, with Minnesota, my biggest concern personally is... once again, I guess I'll say it, is Mike Zimmer. Is he the coach? He's being given, like, he's well respected in the league as a defensive mastermind, and very rightly so. Unfortunately, his defense very uncharacteristically fell apart last year, but I'm more interested to see how that kind of forms back together, because Mike Zimmer, once again, is that mastermind. Their offense looks like they could do exactly what they want to do. They want to win the game by running, but they have enough offensive firepower to come back throwing. And with all the great receivers that Will kind of mentioned, I mean, look who he's throwing to. Of course, he's going to have good stats, but it all runs through Dalvin Cook. So my main concern now my concern isn't on the offense, it's on the defense. So Zimmer, I know everyone always kind of says, oh, he's my dark horse for being on the hot seat. Or no, wait, is he going to win the Super Bowl this year? There's just too many narratives that are polarizing where I sit and I look at Vikings saying, on paper, they're very talented, but are they going to be able to put it together? If they're in any other division, I would feel a lot more confident with them being like, oh, they're the dark horse for me. But because they do have to get through Aaron Rodgers and what looks like to be a pretty tough Bears defense, I still think they'll do a little bit better than the Bears. Sorry, Eric. But once again, there's so many question marks with the Vikings where I want to get excited for them, but there's so many of these little things saying, wait, what about this, this, and this that I'm not finding myself saying on other elite teams that I would say, oh, no, I think they're going to go really far.
Hey, Eric, how does it feel to sit there and have just like overweight, like myself, just people that would never think of playing quarterback talking crap about a starting NFL quarterback like we could tell him how to do his job? Do people in the NFL, like, if you're a quarterback, do you listen to that? Like, do you like listen to your own criticism?
In 5th grade, I was a baller at kickball, dude. I was an athlete.
that qualifies, Tom.
I did. Eric just like snickers at the whole, because it's just like, you know, I mean, I don't know. That's just funny.
No, but Eric is qualified. So let's get Eric's opinion on Kirk Cousins as a former quarterback.
Yeah, I would say, Tommy, don't apologize, because I got the Bears and the Lions at the bottom of this division too. And I actually think the Vikings are going to do better than at least what everyone here is saying. I do think they're going to be pretty good. Not just offensively, which I think, you know, you mentioned everything runs through Dalvin Cook, but yes and no, because they got a hell of a passing game too. But because of Dalvin Cook, they've also got a hell of a play-action game when he's not running the ball. And I think that Kirk Cousins gets zero credit for being as good as he is. Maybe he hasn't won any big games, or certainly not ones people think he should have won.
I think he just finally won his first Monday Night Football game after like 10 tries.
Okay, whatever. There's a bunch of other guys on that team that hadn't won either. So if they all do their job, if defense shows up, you know, he doesn't have the Bears defense got his back every week. And the Packers were pretty good last year too. And if everyone, you know I reminded a few people of it, but Aaron Rodgers could have won that game, but didn't. So it's not just Kirk Cousins. And I think if he just keeps doing what he's going to do, the way the world works is if you get good at what you do, which he is, and you just keep doing that over time, you're going to win your share of little games, medium, and big games. So the people that don't think he's won anything yet, I disagree with you. And I think he's going to win his share this year Maybe they don't win the division, but I think they'll win enough to get in the playoffs. I think they'll win enough to advance in the playoffs beyond the first round. And along the way, do they run the risk of maybe getting blown out like they did last year against the Packers early in the season? Yep. But so do a lot of teams. But, not everybody has Aaron Rodgers. And so you got the next best guy that you've got at your position, and you've got a collective team that the coach is responsible for pulling together. Another guy I don't think gets a lot of credit for putting that team together is Rick Spillman. I played with his brother Chris, and those two together, I mean, they came from a football family. Heck, they both played. I know Chris did, played at Massillon, and I'm going to guess Rick probably played there too. And they're smart guys, and he should, if he doesn't already, get a lot of credit. George Payton, who just became the GM there in Denver. Was in Chicago when I was there. He's a good young guy, but he came through Minnesota as well. So I think that organization probably, they don't get the credit they deserve, especially lately, and maybe deservedly so, because last year the defense didn't show up. But I think they're, talent-wise on that team, it's just a matter of coming together, which I think they have a very good chance of doing this year.
Yeah, first of all, it's crazy how little attention was paid to Rodgers' decision not to run in that third down on the goal line, and how everything was about Matt LaFleur's play calling and deciding to kick the field goal. And then, of course, all the problems after that were, it's with the organization in Green Bay. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, Eric, because, yes, even the MVP, the great Aaron Rodgers, still, does not always make the right decision. But I'm actually with you, Eric. That's what I teased at the start of the division preview. The more I look at this Minnesota team, we had Luke Braun on, who's a host of the Locked On Vikings podcast, really knows the team in and out. He's podcasting about the Vikings 5 days a week. And he convinced me that the additions they've made, their defense actually improved towards the end of last season. They really started to come together. If they can keep Dalvin Cook healthy, which is not always something that has been easy. As a Florida State fan, I saw him have injury problems in college as well. But if they can stay healthy, I actually do have the Vikings making the playoffs. I have them contending with Green Bay. I still think the Packers edge out for the division, but I'm with you, Eric. I think the Vikings actually will finish second in the division, and I think they will make the playoffs and could surprise a lot of people. So let's circle around to the final team. Our producer, Anthony, lifelong Lions fan. Ty Schalter, lifelong Lions fan. Erik Kramer, former quarterback for the Lions. But I think we can all be in agreement here that they, at least this year, are at the bottom of the AFC North. Eric, we'll let you start with this one as someone who played for the team. What's your outlook on Detroit? We'll do some quick runs. So, re-signed DB Mike Ford, Romeo Okwara. Ty, when you were on our show last, when we did a Lions deep dive, you mentioned Okwara specifically. Key additions: quarterback Jared Goff now, running back Jamal Williams from Green Bay, wide receiver Brashad Perriman and Terrell Williams, defensive line Michael Brockers, and Quentin Dunbar, former Seahawk. Key departures: Matthew Stafford, now in LA, Kenny Golladay, now in New York or New Jersey, wide receiver Marvin Jones, wide receiver Danny Amendola, still a free agent, Desmond Trufant, Justin Coleman, and running back Kerryon Johnson. And their big draft pick, offensive line Penei Sewell, who fell to them in the first round, defensive tackle Levi Onwuzurike, and defensive tackle Aleem McNeil. So, Eric, how are you feeling about Detroit?
I don't, as you're talking about this, I was just thinking, there's probably in this division not been more rebuilds by any team other than the Lions in the last, say, 25 years. I mean, it seems like coaches, players, the Nick Farley, right, when he was drafted out of Auburn, and all these players and Calvin Johnson, everybody was going to turn things around, and nobody ever does. And I think they've now come to the realization, now they've got a new GM, a new head coach. They, did a favor to Matt Stafford. They got Jared Goff, but what they really got was 2 draft picks. And so I think this is a team that has gone, look, we've kind of messed this up many times before. Let's get our feet on the ground. Let's get the way we're going to do things solid. We've got, Dan Campbell's kind of flown off the handle a little bit when he first took the job about biting kneecaps and everything like that. But I think the idea is that he's decided that, hey, this is my chance right now to solidify myself as a head coach and bring in the type of people that we're going to get, and the ones that are here and the ones that are going to come here are going to be of a certain mentality. We're going to draft them that way. We're going to mold them that way. And that's going to be who we're going to be for the next however long I'm going to be here. And I think that's the right way to go about it. They're not selling out for this year. They're probably going to finish at the bottom, and maybe the bottom of the whole NFC. But I think they're looking at the long range. They're looking at 2-3 years down the road, and they're going to compile a bunch of draft picks like the Cleveland Browns. Look how good they become after all the successful draft picks that have panned out for them.
Only took 25 years, but they got there.
But if you look at the last 3 or 4 years, this is what I think Detroit's trying to do. You know, they were compiling picks. They're going to, as I said, they're not shooting for they're not shooting for the stars this year. They're willing to mold this team into this is the way we show up Monday through Saturday. We then go put it on the field on Sunday, and we just repeat that process from here on out. And I think they're going about it the right way. I don't think they're going to win a bunch of games this year, but I think they do have a chance of setting the tone for how they're going to do things from years to come.
Erik, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you the last quarterback to win a playoff game for Detroit, or have they won playoffs since then? I know Stafford didn't.
They have not won a playoff game since, and that's going back a ways. So
well, maybe you're the good luck charm. Coming on the Pigskin Party podcast, you're going to turn things around.
You know who I think doesn't get any credit? Zero, in fact,
Barry
for
Sanders.
all of those teams. Who?
Barry Sanders.
Barry got a little bit.
That was a joke.
Certainly got a little bit.
That was a joke.
Kevin Colbert.
It's a bad joke.
Who's now the general manager at the Steelers.
Yep.
He and a guy named Ron Hughes did a great job over the years of putting that talented team together. Yeah, we got blown out a few times, but you talk about talent. There wasn't 3 or 4 teams, I think, during the years I was there anyway, that had as much talent as that team on all sides of the ball, including not just offense and defense. They had Mel Gray returning punts and kickoffs. Who's the guy at Vanderbilt? The punter. He played in Kansas City for a little bit too. Anyway, Eddie Murray was the kicker, and that team was solid top to bottom. And I think they haven't had that in a while. They have not had the top to bottom talent, and maybe that's the direction they're going. Hopefully they will. And I think that they have a chance of doing that if they just keep focused on what they're doing, despite what everyone else is, now jumping on. Hey, they're going to be terrible. If they can stay focused on what they know they got to do, despite what everyone else is around them saying, they'll stay focused. They'll turn it around.
Ty, as I mentioned earlier, last time we had you on, we were doing our Lions deep dive. We did our team deep dive series. Things have changed quite a bit. I believe that was late November, early December when I had you on. Do you believe in the plan? Erik seems to be on board with what Dan Campbell is doing. How do you feel about what Detroit's outlook is for the long term and, of course, for this season?
Yeah, well, and I think Dan Campbell, the kneecap biting and the, I'm not going to wipe your butt quotes have really captured the national media's attention. But what you're not seeing is the total, absolute culture change from one end of the spectrum to the other that Dan Campbell's instilled. So, we're talking about a guy who, in Matt Patricia, where it was, I'm the mastermind, total control, everything is my way. I motivate players by cussing them out. And now it's literally the opposite. And Dan Campbell, and it's like you look at, he's a former player. Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, is a former player. Mark Brunell is the quarterback's coach. Deuce Staley's the running back's coach, and that's all the way down. And it's not just to be, hoping some of their ability will rub off, but it's to understand, hey, like, we understand what you're going through. We can guide you, and they can kind of be the veterans because, of course, they don't have a lot of high caliber veterans, and they've got a lot of young guys that are coming in. And people are talking about the Lions right now, and I understand Jared Goff. I watched Jared Goff play quarterback last year too, but I also watched him play quarterback 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and I saw what happened when he had a system and he believed in himself. And it's all mental for him. It's not physical for him. So you bring in Anthony Lynn, the guy who made Justin Herbert, and you put in front of him a top 10, possibly top 5 offensive line with those 2 tackles in that center. You have a top 5, possibly top 10 running game DeAndre Swift is electric. Jamal Williams, I think, is a great number 2. All-pro tight end, TJ Hawkinson. And people are like, who's worse, the Lions or Texans?
No one should compare
look
the Texans
at the Texans
to
roster. They don't have anything like that in place. Now, no. And okay, wide receivers, they have like a poor man's version of what they had before with Galladay and Jones. And okay, now you have Brashad Perriman and Terrell Williams, and Williams is a good player. Perriman hasn't been able to make height plus speed equal
except for like 2 games in Tampa Bay where everybody thought
NFL, and I don't think that's going to be different here. But you do have, but so so you've got Jared Goff. He's going to take deep shots, and it's going to be that play action, and then deep off the play action. That's what it's going to be. And defensively, the problem here is now you have Bob Quinn spent 5 years drafting to Matt Patricia's physical profiles, and you have a lot of guys that match Matt Patricia's physical profiles, and some of them can even play football. But now you have Aaron Glenn. They're changing the system. They're changing who fits in what roles. They're changing what they're asking players to do. And you have a guy like Trey Flowers, who is as good as anybody is as that 3-4 end, who can hold up, occupy 2 blockers, who can shed a blocker and make a play, who can control that point of attack and allow linebackers to come up and make that play. Now you're asking him to stand up and play linebacker? You're taking some of the best pieces that you have on the defense and asking them to do stuff they've never done and possibly can't do. And the secondary is, Jeffrey Okudah. Everyone's saying it's night and day, not just on the field, but off the field. He was so reserved, so quiet, a robot. And then he went out there and didn't play well like all rookie corners. Every rookie corner was bad. Patrick Peterson was bad as a rookie. Like, people forget that. But he's got a long way to go.
He didn't come on until year 2. Yeah.
Huh? No, and even Revis needed like 3 weeks. We weren't 100% sure about Revis until like the bye week. But so you put that all together, and they still don't have. And this is the biggest indictment of Bob Quinn. Was Bob Quinn took over as general manager, needing more than anything a linebacker who can cover the middle of the field. And after 5 years and drafting like 5 linebackers in the first 3 rounds, they still don't have a linebacker who can cover in the middle of the field. Unless Jamie Collins woke up as good Jamie Collins that day, which doesn't always happen. So, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of problems with the defense. They have a long way to go. But I think you're going to see, like Erik said, they're going to win more games than you think. And they're going to surprise some very good teams. And you're going to see what this team looks like, and it's all in on 2023. They got 2 first-round picks next year, 2 first-round picks the year after that. Everybody's salary comes off the books. They're going to owe, like, Hal Vaitai $10 million in dead money, Jared Goff a few million, and basically the whole rest of the cap is completely uncommitted at that point. And I think that's where you see
Tommy,
the Lions
what are your thoughts
really
on
start to challenge.
Detroit? Do you see some hope on the horizon, maybe down the road with this Detroit team?
Yeah, I'll make mine quick. I am optimistic for the Lions' future because I feel like for very similar reasons that Ty and Erik brought, it feels different this time. They're not putting themselves in a box where they say, we need to have instant success now to prove that we can continue to rebuild. They're doing it the right way. Unfortunately, I don't think I am as optimistic as, say, Ty is. I know even though he said, it's 2023 is the window where he's expecting better improvements, which I absolutely agree with. But, I'll make mine short and just say, hey, Ty, how does it feel? It looks like me and you, we're at the bottom of our division, or a lot of people are predicting. So it's all right. It's lonely here, but at least you have me as a friend, huh?
Eagles and Lions fans unite.
Yeah, for sure.
Will, you want to take us home? And I'm sorry, Ty, go ahead. Throw in your 2 cents.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm used to it. It was the 0-16 year. It was the morning after 0-16, where I'd been thinking about getting into sports writing for a long time. And I called in to my local sports radio show. And as I was on hold, I was like, why am I doing this? This is objectively the worst sports team on earth. How do I still care? And I took my lunch break, got a Blogspot account, started a blog, and just never stopped writing because that whole thing was just like, how do I still care? It's been so bad for so long, but I'm used to it.
Hey, Ty, going back to that 0-16 season, look at Orlovsky, the guy who unknowingly ran out of the back of the end zone. Look at where he's parlayed that to now. The guy's like, he's
doing okay.
He's a great quarterback evaluator now. Apparently.
Eric, are you just? Or do you? What was your? What was your butt fumble,
Amazing.
Eric? My butt fumble. Oh, so we played. You remember when the Marlins, the year they won the World Series? What was that? 97 or 98?
97, yeah.
So we go to play Miami on a Sunday night, and they had Marino, and I guess that was a Joe Ribey Stadium back then. Mm-hmm. And because of the Marlins, during the World Series, you know who's going to win, who's going to lose. Well, they won, and so they bumped us out from Sunday night to Monday night. So there was 2 Monday night games that week, and we're driving and we're going down to score. So that was, but they had the dirt infield still on the field then, and I lined up underneath the center, and I'm calling the snap count underneath the center, and Todd Perry's going, "Get out of here! You belong to the next guy." So
the guard.
Nice. We ended up scoring on that drive and we won the game, but that was my butt fumble.
So my wife, we were watching football together, and she's like, "How do they know when to snap the ball if they can't hear?" And I was like, "Well, you see, the hands go in kind of the butt taint region, and you just give them a little tap." And she's like, "You don't actually touch him, do you?" And I'm like, oh yeah, contact. And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "Yes, I'm telling you."
Yeah.
Well, I think that's as good a spot as any to wrap up this show. Erik, you've been amazingly generous with your time. We did 2 episodes with you because you had so much to give, telling us your crazy up and down story. We're glad to see you're doing so well now, and for joining us to talk some football and some NFC North, of which you know very well. Ty, glad you could come on. Excited to have you on again. We'll definitely have you on again in the future. Tommy, Will.
No problem, buddy.
Hey, Will, thanks for showing up
pay
this
me
time.
for him.
You know, and growing out your hair, that kind of thing. Tommy, always here, never misses a beat, no matter what. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. If you've listened to both of these episodes, super appreciative. Like I said, we called an audible. We did a separate second episode because the first one, the story with Erik, was so good. We didn't want to cut it short, but we did our preview. Please, as always, make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and continue to leave us those 5-star reviews. We are still batting 1,000. Want to keep that going as long as we can. Check us out on Twitter at @OfficialPPPod. You can watch this on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Don't forget to sign up for Legit Football at legitfootball.com. I'll put a link in the episode description. Thanks again. You get a bonus episode this week. Appreciate everyone listening, and make sure to stick around for the flavor of the week.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Pigskin Party Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort. We'll catch you in the next Pigskin Party.